Welcome to Shadow Warefare. This channel exists to expose hidden spiritual battles, reveal unseen tactics of darkness, and equip you with truth that empowers your prayer life. Here we talk about things most people are afraid to name, things happening quietly behind the scenes, things that affect your spiritual growth without you even realizing it. Today's message is not entertainment. It is a warning, a revelation, and for many of you, a turning point. The topic you clicked on is serious, and I don't use these words lightly. Which reveals the 4 hidden altars in your home that block every prayer you pray. I am speaking as someone who once stood on the other side, who participated in spiritual systems designed to interrupt prayers, weaken believers, and delay breakthroughs. I am not here to glorify darkness. I am here to expose it so you can walk free. Let me ask you something before we go any further. Have you ever prayed sincerely, fasted deeply, cried out with faith, yet felt like your prayers were hitting a ceiling? Have you ever wondered why others seem to move forward spiritually, while you feel stuck, drained, or confused? Have you ever felt unexplained heaviness in your home, sudden loss of peace, constant distractions during prayer, or strange resistance when you try to read the Word? If any of that sounds familiar, stay with me, because what I am about to share is not commonly preached, but it is very real. When I was deep in witchcraft, we were trained to understand one fundamental truth. Prayers are powerful, but access points matter. A prayer released into a spiritually compromised environment does not function the same way as a prayer released from a clean altar. Many people don't realize this because they think altars only exist in temples, shrines, or forests. That is one of the greatest lies. Altars can exist anywhere intention, agreement, and repetition meet, including your home. Your home is supposed to be a place of rest, authority, and spiritual covering. But when certain objects, practices, or unbroken agreements exist inside it, your home becomes contested ground. Witches understand this very well. That is why spiritual attacks often target households, not individuals alone. If the altar in the home is polluted, prayers prayed inside that home become weak, delayed, or completely blocked. The first hidden altar I want to expose is the altar of ungodly objects. This is one of the most common and least suspected altars, because these objects often look harmless, decorative, cultural, or even a Christian. In witchcraft, objects are used as anchors. They hold spiritual permission. When an object is dedicated, prayed over, or used in ritual, it carries a spiritual signature. Bringing such an object into your home is like inviting that spiritual influence to live with you. These objects include items received from questionable sources, gifts from people involved in occult practices, items bought for a protection, a luck or energy, and objects associated with other spiritual systems. Dream catchers, evil eye charms, ancestral artifacts, symbolic statues, ritual candles, special mirrors, crystals, incense burned without spiritual discernment, and even some artwork can serve as altars. In witchcraft, we didn't need a whole shrine. Sometimes a single object was enough. Once placed in a home, that object becomes a listening post. It observes, interferes, and in some cases, speaks spiritually against the prayers made in that space. I remember clearly how we were taught that if a believer unknowingly kept a dedicated object in their bedroom or living area, their prayers would become inconsistent. They would feel sleepy when praying. They would feel distracted. Their dreams would become chaotic. And most importantly, their spiritual authority would slowly leak away. The object doesn't have power on its own. The power comes from the agreement made by keeping it. That agreement may be ignorant, but spiritually, ignorance does not cancel consequence. Some of you may say, but I didn't know. I understand. Many people don't know. That's why this video exists. Darkness thrives in secrecy. Light exposes and destroys it. When such objects remain in a home, prayers asking for breakthrough, protection, or clarity often get blocked because the altar of the home is divided. You cannot ask God for freedom while unknowingly housing items that represent spiritual bondage. The second hidden altar is the altar of unresolved covenants. This one is deeper and more uncomfortable because it doesn't always involve physical objects, it involves history. Covenants are agreements made spiritually, sometimes verbally, sometimes through actions, sometimes through rituals you didn't even realize were rituals. In witchcraft, covenants are everything. They give access. They give legal rights. Many people unknowingly entered covenants in their past. Childhood rituals, ancestral traditions, oath-like prayers, secret promises made in desperation, dedications done by parents or grandparents, participation in spiritual ceremonies outside of God. Even words spoken repeatedly like "why will always be like this," or "this runs in my family." Words create agreements. Repetition seals them. There are also covenants tied to trauma, abuse, manipulation, deep fear, and moments of extreme emotional pain can create spiritual doorways. In witchcraft, we understood that trauma creates cracks in spiritual walls. Through those cracks, influence enters. When such covenants remain unbroken, they act as invisible altars inside a home. You may move houses, change furniture, even relocate cities, but the covenant travels with you. When prayers rise from a life carrying unresolved covenants, those prayers often meet resistance, not because God is unwilling, but because there is a legal argument happening in the spiritual realm. Witches know this. We were taught to reinforce old covenants rather than create new ones, because old covenants are harder to break. That is why some families experience the same patterns for generations. Poverty, sickness, broken marriages, fear, confusion, delay. It's not random. It's altar activity. Your home becomes a place where those covenants speak daily, especially if they are never confronted. They influence atmosphere. They affect children. They drain peace. And they interfere with prayer flow. You may pray passionately, but something feels like it's pulling you backward. That is the sound of an unresolved covenant demanding attention. The third hidden altar is the altar of entertainment and media. This one will challenge many people, but it must be said, in witchcraft, sound and sight are gateways. Music, movies, series, games, and online content are not neutral. They carry frequencies, messages, and invitations. When certain types of media are consumed repeatedly in a home, they form an altar. This altar is powerful because it is fed daily. Violent content, sexual content, occult-themed entertainment, horror movies, shows that glorify witchcraft, psychics, vampires, spells, or dark powers, music that promotes rebellion, despair, lust, or death. These things are not just entertainment in the spiritual realm. They are sermons. They preach. They teach. They invite. I remember rituals where specific movies or songs were used to soften a person's spiritual defenses. We didn't need them to believe in witchcraft. We just needed them to watch, listen, and agree subconsciously. And agree subconsciously. The more the content was repeated in a home, the stronger the altar became. That altar then worked against prayer by dulling spiritual sensitivity. People would pray, but they could not hear. They would worship, but feel empty. They would read scripture, but feel bored. If your home is constantly filled with noise that contradicts God's nature, your prayers have to fight through that noise. Many people wonder why they feel no presence of God at home, but feel peace in church. Atmosphere matters. Altars shape atmosphere. The altar of media is one of the most defended altars because people don't want to let go of what they enjoy. but enjoyment without discernment is a trap. The fourth hidden altar is the altar of disorder and neglect. This one surprises people the most, but it is very real. In witchcraft, chaos is not accidental. Disorder weakens authority. When a home is consistently neglected, filled with clutter, dirt, broken items, unfinished repairs, darkness, and decay, it creates an altar of stagnation. This altar does not scream, it drains. A neglected home reflects neglected spiritual authority. It creates a low-level heaviness that affects motivation, prayer discipline, and mental clarity, which is often targeted homes already in disorder because the altar was half built. All we had to do was reinforce it spiritually. People living in such environments often feel tired without reason, procrastinate prayer, and feel overwhelmed by simple spiritual acts. This is not about perfection or wealth. It is about stewardship. A home does not need to be expensive to be spiritually clean. It needs intentional care, light, order, peace. When a home is treated with honor, it responds spiritually. In contrast, when a home is ignored, it becomes a resting place for spiritual resistance. I want you to understand something very important. None of these altars block prayer because God stops listening. They block prayer because they interfere with authority. Prayer is not just words. It is position. When your position is compromised, your prayers lose momentum. When I left witchcraft, one of the hardest things I had to accept was how effective these systems were, not because they were stronger than God, but because people were unaware. Awareness breaks power. Exposure dismantles altars. Some of you listening right now are feeling conviction, not condemnation. That conviction is a gift. It means you are being invited to clean your spiritual house. Start with honesty. Ask yourself what is in your home that does not align with your faith. Ask what agreements from your past were never renounced. Ask what voices you allow to speak daily into your space. Ask whether your home reflects peace or pressure. Breaking these altars does not require fear. It requires authority. Remove objects that do not belong. Renounce covenants out loud. Renounce covenants out loud. Change what you consume. Restore order intentionally. Pray not from desperation but from alignment. When these altars are dismantled, prayer changes. It becomes sharper, clearer, faster. You feel peace return, dreams become lighter, worship becomes easier, and the sense of spiritual resistance lifts. I'm sharing this because I don't want you fighting blind battles. I've fought on the other side long enough to know the strategies. Darkness hates exposure. If this message is stirring something in you, don't ignore it. This channel exists to keep exposing what hides in the shadows. If this spoke to you, stay connected. Clean altars create clear heavens, and clear heavens change lives.